Good afternoon, everyone. The May 28th, 2024 regular council meeting is called to order at 4 o'clock. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare, Councillor Mafty, all in favour? None opposed, that carries. There are two delegations this afternoon. Please try and limit your presentation to 10 minutes. The first delegate is Sergeant Mark Jones. Mr. Jones, the floor is yours.
Okay. Perfect.
Just lift it up a little bit.
Sorry.
Perfect.
Just going to give you, I'll just give a quick rundown again. We've got our April police report, which I've submitted. I think just to save time, because I know there's some other agendas here. Trends I'm starting to see, higher call volumes. So far, every month this year of 2024, we've beat our previous year's last month for files. That is concerning to me. That's a large increase in work. And as I look right now, I already started looking at May's. We've already way surpassed. We haven't even completed May, and we've surpassed last month of May. So these are things that are concerning because of the workload. And this isn't just simplistic files. I was just having this discussion a few seconds ago. So these are things that we're keeping an eye on. There are some positives to this. There are some of our stats have increased, which I don't like to see, like assaults. But one I really like to see that's decreased is sexual assaults. So there's give and take in all this, and it's good. Trends I am noticing, though, we are seeing a huge uptick in mental health related calls. Mental health has become the forefront, and it's not simplistic. It's complicated. So these are concerning. And again, another risk area which I'm always working on is how many prisoners are we actually putting into our cells? And nice to say we've dropped. We're dropping, which is good. I like that. There's more. We're looking for more community-based resources, so we don't have to do that. Those are things that we are trying to obtain. Overall, things are on track for what I can see. We do need to be concerned about certain things, which I'm keeping an eye on, and we'll let you know as we go along. We're coming into summer. Summer months are going to be extremely busy. We have a number of events that are going on. We've already planned for extra resources to come in for those, and hopefully they should make them safe and enjoyable. Just so you know, one of the issues we had talked prior is impaired driving enforcement. Myself and the officer in charge of Tofino worked together. We did a cost-sharing initiative, and we've got some extra bodies coming up specifically. You might have heard now, obviously, Facebook said different things about, oh, look, the guys are back out doing the blocks and stuff. So we are getting those back up and running. It's not easy. It's a lot of political fighting, but we've got it going to an extent. We've got some of the extra members coming out as well locally to try to help do that as well. So we're seeing an increase in those type of offenses now, which we're also seeing a decrease in stuff like impaired driving accidents, those type of things, which we really want to see. Aside from that, it's been pretty productive. There's a lot of different things that have occurred, and I'll definitely keep you updated on how this file thing is going and see what happens with our summer for each of our, each monthly thing you'll get. Do you have any questions, concerns, comments?
Thank you for your report. You had applied for a couple of extra members, I think you said last time.
Yes, I have. I'm still waiting. That's going to be a lengthy process. I understand there's going to be some talking done at the provincial level, and we'll see what comes out of it, because we are a provincially funded detachment. So I'm hoping. I keep pushing it every time with my upper management and keep asking where we're at with that.
Yes, at the UBCM conference in September, we're trying to get a meeting with the RCMP there. To promote your cause.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And my other question was, you were looking for staff for the cells. Did you find some staff?
Absolutely, we've had an uptick in people applying for that, which is great. So we're doing good. Our cells, ironically, we're down in prisoners, but we're up in staff now. I guess which is a good thing to have in some ways.
Definitely. Any questions from council? Part of your strategic plan was going to be monitoring speeding in school zones, I believe?
Yes, so we did discuss that, and that is something I just had a meeting before here with my detachment members, explained how we were going to obtain this. There's a number of different strategic, the province gives us different strategic stuff, the district for the island gives us strategic, and then as the community, from each community, they give us ours as well. So there was a large number of them, but yes, that is definitely something. It's going to be the speed enforcement. We're going to be looking at trying to set up some different situations of members being out there. I think you should already have seen some. I believe I've asked to have increased patrols and get out there and start doing a bit more. So there should be some projects you'll start seeing coming along there, because those are 24/7 and they're dusk till dawn and they're posted, and we'll try to keep people reasonable. We'll warn them, keep them educated. Unless they're doing something extremely silly, then they might have to get a ticket.
Okay, that's great. If there's no other questions from council, I'll just thank you for your report.
Right on. Thank you very much.
The next delegation is from the Ucluelet Skate Park Committee. And I'm guessing that some of you are here in the audience.
Hello? Yep, we're good. Thanks for taking the time to hear from us today. We do have most of the committee here, Ollie, Leon, and Riley. First off, just wanted to thank them for volunteering many hours of the Seaplane skate nights. A lot of this community is actively using those skate nights. Kids, do you love those skate nights? Really why we're here is to put some thought and some effort and some eyeballs on the skate park. I know all of you have received the email that we sent a little while ago to council. We have been working with Abby since 2022. We do know there is budget allocation in 2025 of 80K and then another 300 or so K in 2028. Really what we're asking is how do we make that happen faster? Really at the end of the day, this is our future generation. The amount of people that come to this community to skateboard is incredible. And you talk about mental health, like that saves kids' mental health, really. I also want to call out some of the people who are here, just some of the families that really support this community and are all taxpayers in this community and use the skate park almost, I don't know, every day. Every day it's dry, essentially. Let's see what I got here. Yeah, I guess to really gist it and break it down, we know the skate park is very old. It's very rough surface. It's not exactly safe to skate. A lot of the events, like the West Coast Triple Plank, which is a huge skate, surf, snow event, holds it in Tofino. Part of that reason is because it's a better skate park. It's a better facility. This is infrastructure for the town that should be upkept just like a school park or a baseball field or anything else, and it's really more used than any of these other facilities. So we're really asking council to strategically work with us and make this happen sooner than 2028. Can we access RMI funds? It does draw tourism, and it's proven to draw tourism in communities like Whistler, Qualicum Beach, all these other communities. Skateboarding's in the Olympics. I mean, it's a legitimate sport that's no longer this side thought that we can kind of brush off, and really just trying to have an open conversation and move forward, because 2028 is a long time away, and like I don't want to wait that long. I don't know, do you guys want to wait that long? So yeah, I think it's really trying to think creatively, access RMI funds, really reallocate some of the budget and prioritize where those funds that the community is spending are going. Because I know there's a lot of, you can look around town, there's a lot of money being spent and a lot of things that need to happen, but I think the priority with the skate park has not really been a priority, and it's way overdue. So yeah, I think really just trying to have an open conversation. And I know this is like a delegation. We have had a delegation prior and have had some support from the council, but it just feels like it hasn't been a priority. So yeah, curious like feedback and how we can move forward. I have the committee here as well, and definitely like want to thank everyone for volunteering and being part of it as well. So.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, can you expand on the idea of using RMI funds?
The process would be, it has to be typically a visitor orientated project. We would need approval from the province to requisition or add in a project of that nature into the RMI, so it'd be subject to their approval process. As far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any other skateboard park projects approved within RMI communities. So of the 14, I've never heard of any, but we'd have to double check to see if there was any available there. Currently, the funding through RMI, it goes in 3-year periods, has been allocated and approved through council's through council, and it wasn't allocated towards that. I think the primary one right now is the Inner Harbor Boardwalk, Small Craft Harbor is where most of the funding is going, and there's some other projects that are currently being approved and are already approved and funded. I'd have to dig up the list for council to reacquaint myself with the exact projects and where the funds are going.
Okay, thank you. I think it's mentioned in the letter that Whistler has used RMI funds for their
That is what
skateboard
I've heard, that
upgrade.
Whistler access RMI funds. And I know for a fact also the Qualicum Beach skate park is a huge resource. The woman or the mother behind that has put in so much effort and really done a ton of research far beyond what we've done, and she's a resource to us and is willing to give us that information. But yeah, I think like even if it wasn't RMI, I think RMI is an avenue, but like we are still talking about some of these other things money is spent in town, and like, is a sidewalk more important than a skate park? Or like how are these things decided, and how is the 2028 budget allocation? Who decided that it went in 2028? Why can't it be 2026? Like, why was the money pushed that far away? Because the 320K, which also states that it's grant dependent and earmarked for this project. I mean, 2028, who knows what staff is going to be around even at that point. It's like it's a long ways away, and obviously even who's living in the community and who's pushing forward the skate park at that point in time. But like, you look at these kids here who, you know, could be future Olympians, like they can't wait that long.
All right, well, thank you for your delegation, and we'll definitely have staff look into it.
Thank you.
Was there any questions from
Can I get a photo
council?
here? Is that okay?
Sure.
I just have one quick question through the mayor. How far along are plans for the Harbor Pathway Boardwalk? I know that was discussed, and I'm wondering to what extent has that money been allocated, committed? Is it still sitting, or is it in the process of being spent?
It is a future expense. The preliminary approval process with the Ministry of Environment, DFO, all of that work is being undertaken to make sure that we can access it, and then that would link up to the other at Water's Edge. There is a little walkway and gazebo there that needs to be repaired in place that council have heard many times. So that's part of that funding that would go to help with that. But no, we haven't expended it at this point in time. RMI is looked at every year, and we put in a updated expenditure plan, and that's coming up. So the funding, would be coming back to council for confirmation of what the spending plan is and what the priorities are, so it can always be really looked at.
I have one more question for council, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Does the harbor platform sidewalk have this many community members showing up and saying, we need this sidewalk, we're starting coalitions, we're fighting this battle? Like, obviously I assume there's not that much engagement, someone coming into meetings and saying like, we need this for our community.
No, but it's been on the books for a very long time.
Okay, yeah. I guess from the skate, Leon, do you know when the skate park was built? It was 2008 or prior to 2008? The updates were 2008? So, yeah. I mean, that's a long time for infrastructure to sit and not. I'll leave it at that, but there's a lot of people that want this, and it's, yeah.
Just hang on for questions from council. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I think this is almost more over to Mr. Lawrence. I'm just thinking we could look into that a little further with the potential of RMI. I know there's a lot of people that do come to town. It's more popular than even, I was thinking for people that come to visit just to skate the skate park. It's got a tourism element to it for sure. But I'm just wondering if in the event that, I'm into exploring different opportunities for funding for sure outside of RMI, but in the event that it could be RMI, I'm just wondering if that might make sense to talk to someone at UBCM and set up a meeting in there or talk about some sort of funding strategy for UBCM and find out what other municipalities are doing. Because I know there's really extensive skate parks in other municipalities, and I don't know how they pay for them, but they're extensive. They're big.
Mm-hmm. So there's two parts to that. For UBCM, to access RMI funding for that would be just a request to the ministry through the regular approval process when we submit our 3-year funding strategy or spending strategy. So if that is the direction that council is interested in going, like, we can revise that spending plan, see what the province has to say, and then it would be working with them to find out whether or not it's if they are able to approve it. If they say no, then it could be a delegation to Minister Popham with the Ministry of Tourism to advocate for it. With respect to skateboard parks, yes, there are many communities out there with significant investments in skateboard parks. They are a lot of it is grant funded. So there are recreation grants that are available specifically for recreation infrastructure, skateboard parks, baseball diamonds, recreation centers, all of those. They come up fairly regularly. And that was the intent of including those funds towards 2028, because you need the full design, have the shovel-ready project, have it full costed. That takes a significant amount of time to get to that point. And then there needs to be the community contribution that goes to support the grant application. So it all kind of lines up. But many communities, the larger urban centers, they just fund them because they have the budgets that are significant enough to be able to accomplish that. Smaller communities typically access the variety of provincial, federal grants out there for recreation infrastructure.
Through the mayor, what about development contributions? I'm sure some of these parks are built by developers coming in and building high rises and whatnot in Vancouver. How was the existing skate park built? What funds were used for that? And was any of that from development charges?
I would need to hand that over to Ms. Fortune to be able to answer how it was funded. But with respect to development cost charges, previously up until May this month, they were not eligible. So skateboard park could be a side agreement with a large development for them to contribute to a specific project, but that would be kind of a side deal. The province is moving away from that means of accessing funding for community infrastructure and amenities. So they're going to what's called an amenity cost charge, which we are working in with the DCC update strategy that we're currently working on. That will be included for recreation infrastructure, but it can only fund the portion of the project that you can align with growth. So it would, if you had 2,000 people in your community and you saw a growth potential of another 1,000, you could only fund 1/3 of that 3,000. If you split it up simplistically like that, that would be the maximum you would be able to utilize ACCs towards a project such as that.
So there's a possibility of some funding coming from that, even with the new legislation.
Yes, but honestly, that's years away from now because you have to build up those funds. So it'd be, once we have our DCC and ACC bylaw approved, then developments get a year anybody in the queue, they get 1 year grace period on the old DCC bylaw, and then you can start collecting for future ACC and DCC. So we're 18 months out before we can start collecting towards the new ACC program once it's been developed.
Councillor Anderson.
So yeah, I was just going to say, I think, we could probably sit down and maybe explore some opportunities here. And then there's like the Lottery Corporation. There's different, avenues that we could probably explore here to see if we can't make this happen.
And on Thursday, Council is having our strategic plan review. And this would be a great topic to bring up at that particular meeting to see, to maybe push it up on the priority scale. So stand by for news on that. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Can I just make one final comment? Since this is on the table in front of us and everyone's here, I just I understand that a lot of the ways that RMI money gets spent in the community, sometimes people don't quite understand it, or they don't necessarily agree that, you know, what's a priority for tourism is a priority for the community. But I really agree with the point you made that we have a project that I think everyone in town sees the benefit of it. I mean, certainly anyone who's got kids sees the benefit of this skate park. Anyone who drives by sees the benefit of this skate park. I think it's you know, a real feature in our community, and I don't want to start prioritizing what's more important or what's less important, but to me this strikes me as a really good thing to invest in, because it's low impact, it's building on something that's already there, and it's something that touches on a lot of aspects of life in the community. You know, when the boardwalk, Harbor Boardwalk, came up, that was something that I had my doubts. It's increasing impact on a sensitive habitat. It's basically taking people to an area that's currently undisturbed. I sort of feel like if there was a choice to maybe revisit how money's spent, this to me seems like it's a bit of a slam dunk. It's a win-win for the community. It's a win-win for visitors. And I think it represents really good value because we're actually expanding something that's already there. So it's not a direct answer to anyone, but I would certainly support a group of galvanized people that already have momentum.
Great. Well, as I said, we'll discuss it on Thursday at our strategic plan review. So thank you. And you all don't have to stay for the whole meeting. If you'd like to leave now, you can. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, what are you here for?
We might need to shut the doors. It's a little noisy out there. Thank you. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none, our next item is a Committee of the Whole report. So may I have a motion for Council to move into Committee of the Whole?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare,
I'll second.
Councillor Anderson, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. Our only Committee of the Whole report is 6.1, Water Sustainability and Conservation. This report will be presented by the Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Committee of the Whole. This report is seeking discussion, consideration, and direction on a couple of water conservation initiatives. So the community is getting warmer, hotter, drier in the summer and growing, which places a ever increasing need to proactively manage our limited water resource through sustainable conservation measures. In the last 20 years, the district has completed 2 professional studies focused on water conservation. The first in 2004 was a water audit, and the second in 2014 was a water conservation study, both completed by Coors and Associates Engineering. The water conservation study seeks to assess current usage and demand, and then provide recommendations for conservation. That study produced a couple of recommendations for us in 2014. The first was to reduce the big leaks in the municipal system. Some of those have been solved. The second was to reduce the smaller leaks in 8 kilometers of asbestos piping that we have, and undertake an investigation, inspection, and repair program. We haven't really started that yet. It's on the plans to get started. The next was to implement universal metering program, so meters in the bylaw for all of the community. That has been started. So at the time of that 2014 report, there were 0 residential meters and 70 commercial meters. So today there's about 30 meters, less than 300 meters in the community. So it's in the bylaw, it's mandatory to have water meters, and it's steadily increasing. But lots of room to grow and close. The next item for recommendation was to consider implementing a water rate model, so sales of water based on time and season. That's something that we haven't implemented yet. And the last recommendation was to transform the water conservation study into a formal water conservation plan. And we haven't done that yet as well. So in light of those sort of historical insights, they're valuable as we reconsider our conservation strategy today. So committee, there's 4 blocks of information within your report. It's water conservation education and campaign, water rates, water conservation policy, including ways to restrict usage, and lastly, water conservation plan. I'll just go through each of those blocks of information briefly. The water conservation education campaign, we're looking for the committee's perception, discussion, and feedback on how water education and information is going in the district right now, and ultimately asking, is it worthwhile to promote and increase that education starting right now? So those are simple measures that we could begin now and inform locals, residents, visitors, that it's in their best interest, in everyone's best interest, to conserve our limited resource by buying low fixture utilities, appliances, taking shorter showers, perhaps having a shower or with a timer, watering the car with a bucket rather than a hose, simple things like that. The part of the education campaign that people can really sink their teeth into is that the less that the system grows for water waste, the lower the tax bills are. And so we can combine those sort of best practices and more practical reasons, really, that people can grab onto in an education campaign. The next item here, the block of information, is about water rates and sales of service. Generally, there's 4 or 5 widely accepted ways to sell water in communities. The first is a flat rate. The second is increasing block rate. The third is constant block rate, then declining block rate, and then period or seasonal billing. What we currently do in the district is we have a flat rate. Users with water meters use their given allotment. It's about 20 cubic meters. And then we charge a value per cubic meter that they use until infinity. And so it's a flat rate, use the allotment, and then constant block rate to infinity. There are ways to sell water that encourage conservation and discourage waste. One way that's fairly dynamic is to use a seasonal billing method, where when the water aquifer is scarce and quite important and declining in the community, in the summer, we have an increasing rate. So it becomes more expensive to use more water in the summer when we need it most. So that's something that we'd like to bring forward to the committee for discussion, to see if there's an appetite for changing our water model sale. Of course, the optimum system that we would bring forward for consideration is equitable and fair and treats each user group intentionally. And so commercial, industrial, residential, etc., short-term rentals, B&Bs, the perfect system sort of treats them all fair with their intended use in mind. So we're trying not to penalize anyone unnecessarily. We're just, the intention is to conserve water and have a system that promotes that. The third block of information here is about water conservation policy. In 2023, staff brought to council water conservation policy and introduced the beginning of water restrictions linked to aquifer levels. There's two widely accepted ways to introduce water restrictions in communities. The first is restrictions linked to available water sources. That's what we're doing now. And then the second is restrictions linked to month, season, time of year. So there's pros and cons to both of those systems, and we can certainly talk through those as you wish. If the committee chooses to provide direction on continuing with the current system that we're doing now, water restrictions linked to aquifer levels, we recommend that we increase those levels a little bit just to get a bit more proactive and get ahead on water conservation. So we have a bit more data from the years past now, and we're accumulating our understanding of the aquifer and the usage and how to best manage that. The last block of information here on your report, committee, is about formalizing a water conservation plan. So as mentioned in 2014, there was a study done. It hasn't been translated into a formal plan yet, and it could be time to do that. And so we've done. We suspect it could cost in the range of $20,000 to $30,000, and with the committee's discussion and council's direction, we'd suggest going out and hiring a professional, a firm, to undertake that formal plan, and we can talk through that as well. So, committee, I have 4 questions from that report, one for each block of information. So, if you don't mind, I'll just ask the question and then open the floor, and we'll have a conversation, and I'll move on to the next question. So the first question here for the committee is the committee of the whole in support of implementing a water awareness, education, and conservation community campaign now?
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. I really like the idea of the communication strategy that you laid out under on page 24, water sustainability and conservation. All those points would be great ways to conserve water for the public, and I especially like the last point, working with Tourism Ucluelet to get that message out for the tourists, because it's one thing for Yuki Mail, but that only reaches our residents, not the tourists. So TU could really get involved with that. Any thoughts from council?
I'm curious. We've not had a sort of rainwater capture, any sort of program prior, right? I'm just wondering if we could do something to encourage people to, rainwater barrels, like maybe work with even one of the businesses and bring them in and maybe, get a cut rate. Because I'd love to have one. I know Sean would. Anybody who's got gardens or grows any of their own stuff, right? You shouldn't be just letting it run off the roof and not keep a little bit of it. So, I use my teapot warming water to water my plants in my container on my front porch, which my rosemary really likes. It's been flowering for like 4 months now. So I'm totally, I think we should have a plan. I think we should be encouraging education, because water is the new oil. It is going to be the reason for wars in the not too distant future, because there is not enough of it. It is a resource that we need to be conserving and not spilling down the drain inadvertently.
On that note, through the mayor, some communities in the past have done for composting bins. They've done like a community buy. So there's an awareness campaign and a bulk order, and it sort of sends the message and gets everybody excited because there's this opportunity to save some money. You have like an information sheet of how to connect it to your system, and they'll be delivered on a certain day, and just sort of having that support, answering questions, and then just doing it all at once, because then it might have more of an effect as just sort of letting the information out, letting people try and find their own rain barrel. Like we can
Yeah, that's
put a
the
package
sort of
together.
thing I was thinking. I know that exists as something that's been done in the past, as you say, for composting. So I think it would be nice to do something similar.
Do you know of any communities that have done that?
No, I know of communities that have banned them and outlawed them in Florida. You're not allowed to do it. I'm not sure why that is, but
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes, yeah, they've
We
got to
don't-
be a covered barrel
Right.
where you run that risk.
And I
if
guess
they're
that's
standing
part of
water.
it too, is to make sure that people are doing it correctly, so that we know what the potential downsides could be, if there are any, and then sort of let that information out. But no, I don't know of anything specific. I seem to recall in Vancouver there was a compost bin drive at one point.
There was. I remember that's how my mom got the compost
Right.
at the house. But yeah, that was a while back. But
Yeah.
So it would have to be spearheaded by like the co-op or Windsor or something.
well, that's
like
what I'm
that.
thinking. If we worked with one of the companies, Lori might have some idea. She might be able to do something where we do a bulk thing. I don't know.
Support an education campaign, but I do have a strong feeling that it would be most effective if it's proactive, if it encourages buy-in, if it's something that gets people to get a rain barrel or encourages people to install a water meter. I mean, I think I know in Tofino everywhere you go there are those little stickers with like the concerned looking raindrop, and nobody cares, right? Especially people who are visiting here for a day or 2 days, and it's just like it's not even on their radar and it doesn't matter. So I feel like you could spend the same amount of money and actually achieve meaningful conservation and buy-in versus just blanketing the community with messaging that's going to be ignored. And so I'm totally in favor of it, but I think it really matters how it's done, and for it to be done properly if it wants to achieve the goal of actually reducing, I don't want to say reducing water consumption, I'll say reducing water wastage, because I think that's really what it's all about.
Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, definitely all for the education campaign. But I was just thinking, what I was going to say, that you said no one's going to pay attention to it. but I was thinking if we have a list of people with business licenses and for the STRs and things like that, and just make them aware that if they could put up a little sign, if you have a cabin or something like that, or like a whatever rental it is, and you can have like a little plaque or something that just says water conservation is an issue in town here. But again, yeah, people, I don't know how much people are gonna do that. I did have a question about water meters. I know it's 300 you said that are in town roughly, and I know that they're a bit pricey, and I know that's a tough one to get everybody on board. People won't voluntarily necessarily say, I want to buy a meter tomorrow kind of thing. But have you ever heard of any programs or any grants or anything like that in Canada where it could potentially help lessen the blow for people that might want to get on board with a meter?
So, not specifically off the tip of my tongue. We are connected with the BC Water Wastewater Association, who is a wealth of resources for all water use, including water conservation and water meters, etc. And so I'm happy to reach out to them and engage and see what sort of assistance programs might be available to help people get on board. I do know that when the 2014 water conservation study was completed, that study did a cost estimation on having a water meter on every line in town, and it was estimated at about $800,000 to $1 million. And so it's certainly something that we feel important to have everywhere, to have a universal meter system that we're tracking and measuring billing fairly. And then we could also encourage people through other measures to get on board.
Roughly, just off the top of your head, sorry, through the mayor. What is the approximate cost of a meter today? Is it $1,400 or something like that?
Yeah, so it goes up in size, goes up in price based on size. So it starts at a couple of $100s for a 3/4 inch meter, all the way up to several $1,000s, $5,000 for a 3-inch meter.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'd really like to see the communication strategy encourage people to, residents to get B-metered. I've talked to people that have installed a meter and their rate actually dropped. So from the flat rate that they were being charged, they're only being charged on usage, and they were paying less with the meters. So if that message could get out to people, that would maybe encourage more people to get one.
Yeah, that's an easy one to incentivize there. It's
Yeah.
cheaper.
Exactly.
Okay, committees. So lots of good input and discussion there. I think we have enough just with that to take away and get to work with. We were hoping and assuming you'd agree in promoting education and information. So we'll get to work on that.
So I do have a potential motion here.
Absolutely.
Hang on, aren't there 3 other? Do you want answers to your 3 other questions?
No, but I have a motion dealing
one
with
by
just
one.
this one.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes,
Yeah, of course.
So I could move that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council implement water restrictions based on the proposed. Oh no, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. I would move that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council direct staff to implement a water awareness and conservation communication campaign now.
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion?
Make it proactive.
Make right.
The signs do nothing.
Okay, all in favor? None opposed? That carries. All right, we'll move into the second question then.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So the next question here is, does the Committee of the Whole prefer the current system of water restrictions based on aquifer levels, or would it favor restrictions based on time of year?
That's a potatoes kind of question. Personally, I think using the current system of water restrictions based on aquifer levels, because if people get accustomed to, May 1st, we're going to level 1 automatically, that's when on April 30th they decide to power wash their house and wash all their vehicles because they know that water restriction is happening on May 1st. So that's just my opinion. I'd like to hear from others, though.
I agree with that with the aquifer levels, because what if we have an insanely bad year and we don't have a restriction because of the time of month and we go and use it all up? So I think aquifer levels is something that people can understand, and it also does change the timing, and so it's always reacting to a situation as opposed to this is just what we got to do at this time of year.
I think it's important if we're going to do that to know how healthy that aquifer is, and that's where we need that hydrologist report on the aquifer, I think, to really be able to implement that properly. But I agree, it is something, as Councillor Kennington, Committee of the Whole member, Councillor, I don't know what I'm calling you, Ian said. Yeah, people can actually understand it if you say the aquifer is down below, we've got the different stages, whatever they are, yellow, orange, red, black. Or dirt brown, I guess, if we're empty. But people can really get behind that. The glass is no longer full; it is now half full. We need to be worried about this. So, I just think that it needs to be informed by information, not just.
If it's the same time every year, people will just start to ignore the messaging. Like if they're not expecting to hear this on, in June 2nd or whatever, like hearing it can be a surprise and it can kick people into action. But if what happens is if it's just by time of year, then the messaging sort of drops off and people are just expected to know it, and it comes out in an email that nobody reads, and it's just kind of like
the unhappy raindrop stickers.
The unhappy raindrop stickers. and the one thing I will say about messaging and raindrop stickers is that the community holds other community members to account for their actions. You see it all the time when people start shaming and guilting other people, and I don't necessarily agree with that. It does have a certain amount of efficacy, I think.
I think the flip side of that, though, is that approaching it based on aquifer levels puts everyone, we're all in the same boat, and it's like we're figuring out how to make the most of a shared resource, whereas times of year it's like a government mandate. I think psychologically people are a lot more inclined to say, hey, I'm invested, and this is how much water there is for all of us, so this is how much there is for me, versus now these idiots at City Hall are telling me what to do. And I think there's a fundamental difference that would put me strongly in favor of the aquifer level being the benchmark. And like, let's say there's a ton of water, then it's sort of like, okay, well, look, your conservation efforts have paid off, so we don't have to get drastic. Or the flip side is like, well, if it's a horrible year, then we don't have to wait an extra month before we can say, look, this is it.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further comments, then I have a potential motion here.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
There might just be a 2B available in there too, and I'll just share this now. So what we're looking for also from the committee is the feeling of increasing the restrictions. So in your appendix, it shows our current restrictions. It's 7 meters, 6 meters, 5, 4.5. We're wanting to increase that to 8.765. So just for you to take it from there.
Yeah, no, I see that you want to raise those levels to be even more proactive. Okay, so I will move that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council implement water restrictions based on the proposed reservoir levels outlined in report number 24-47, including the increased levels and the restriction stages.
I'll second that.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion?
I'll just say it's better to be more conservative when we're talking about a limited resource. So,
Okay, all in favor? None opposed, that carries.
Okay, great. Number 3 here is, through the mayor, would the Committee of the Whole support using water utility rates as a mechanism to achieve water conservation goals?
Okay, I feel like I would support that. Questions from council?
What does that mean?
Through the mayor. So what the committee could do is make a recommendation for council to direct staff to come back with a report, and the report would have options and information to move towards probably a seasonal water rate mechanism, water billing mechanism, and it would be moving the district in direction towards updating that bylaw.
My concern with that is if we don't have meters, how can we do that? Because all that does is people, if it's not metered, people will just secretly use as much water as they want, and the only people that won't use the water are the honest people, and they'll end up paying just as much as the dishonest people. So I don't really support this until we have meters.
I think metering would certainly make it easier.
Then it's a done deal, right? Like
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Could I make a comment on that note? One of the things that strikes me is that the ideal scenario, you were talking about the different ways of measuring block use. I think in a perfect world, what we could work towards is a system where you pay incrementally more. So like whatever level of consumption is deemed, appropriate for like a mindful household. Okay, now you've got your meter. That's what you're paying for that first block. If you exceed, no one's cutting the water off, but you're going to start paying more and more and more. And I think that is a much more effective and efficient and reliable way of achieving all the goals. Like you promote conservation at the household level, you're charging everybody fairly, and you're putting the district in the best possible position of measuring consumption and seeing how it relates to the aquifer level and all of that. So I know that can't be accomplished overnight, but that's one more point in favor of figuring out a way to incentivize the meters, because if you then link what you're paying to your ability to meter it, I think a lot of people are going to be like, man, you know what? Like $1,000 for a water meter, if it pays for itself in 2 years, it's like, it's a slam dunk. And I totally agree that the tragedy of the commons is a lot of people are going to be like, especially if it's seasonal, they'll be like, fuck it, I'm paying anyway. And they're just going to waste water until, you know, the directive comes from on high. Whereas if they have a meter in their home and they can monitor it themselves, they know exactly once they've exceeded it. Sorry for the language. I realize this is a council meeting after the fact.
Yeah, that's
Actually, it's
kind of
committee
like
of the whole. Is that like a little
committee.
bit?
It's a little,
Yeah, a little
right.
more relaxed.
So it's kind of like the way hydro gives you step 1 and step 2, and I totally think it's a great thing, but there need to be meters. And I say that like I live in a strata. I pay the strata water bill every month, but it's a block rate for all 8 units. I'm like, I don't know what our water use is in the strata. No idea. We have no meter.
So the seasonal billing could be, so we've flushed it out through a report to council, but where we stand today with the ideas that we're thinking about it today is that the seasonal rate would of course only kick in the summer, and that there'd be incremental blocks. So as you consume more, you're billed more. So it's encouraging conservation there, and then also built into that program would be perhaps rewards for using less water. So we can just work through that and encourage people to get onto the meter system. As this sort of 2014 study demonstrates, it takes a long time to get an entire community universally onto the meter system, but we can start to proactively do that more intensely, I think, and also through water meter, through sales of water, also promote that in the same direction. So clearly we don't have it all. I don't have it all worked out today, but it would be in a report that would come back to council.
But we're not currently metering, because I'm getting a flat rate bill whether I'm in town or gone for a month. It's the same bill. So I'm curious how we're charging people if we're not actually metering them, and how that's fair. Like I have a meter, but nobody's coming to read it, and I'm paying a flat rate. So
I see.
You want me to answer that
CEO Dwayne here. Yeah.
So I can lend a little bit of insight into that. So we do have 2 different rates. We have a flat rate for non-metered homes, and then we have an additional rate for metered homes. Now the reason that you're seeing probably the kind of flat rate is that the volume is 20 cubic liters meters.
20 cubic meters.
20 cubic meters. It's very high. So we meter every month. We have Public Works go around and read all the meters. We enter that data into it. We've caught a number of leaks in there. We had the main fish plant, one of the fish plants had a very high water bill because their meter, they were using excessive water, and they were charged appropriately for that. Homes are the same way, but if your host never reaches 20 cubic meters of water in a month, then your bill will just look flat. So there's a lot of things that we could do here to adjust that. We can reduce that 20 down to 15 or 10 or whatever that average is. Right now it's very, very high for a community, so it's not many houses reach that level no matter what they do. So we can adjust that and adjust the rates accordingly. We could also implement a flat rate charge for those households that don't have meters at a level that encourages them to get a meter. At the same time, there are grants out there, or have been grants for water meter placements. Whether or not there's one out there right now, I am uncertain, but there have been in the past where it was encouraging communities to implement a water meter program. That was back in 2010 for about 5-6 years. There was a big push. I'm just not certain if it's still ongoing. But even the municipality could collect enough funds to fund a meter incentive program or something like that. There's lots of things that we could do to try to incentivize. And for those households that just don't want to get a meter for whatever reason that may be, then council could elect to make the rate for flat rate that you don't have a meter appropriate for that sentiment. So there's lots of different things that you could utilize and mechanisms within your rate schedules to encourage that transition over to meters. And the benefit of those meters also help leak detection on private property. It helps us identify where the challenges are, helps residents be more informed of their water consumption.
I think that's an interesting point, because here I am paying this flat rate, and I had no idea that if I used more, I would be charged more. But essentially, I've been paying for water that I haven't been using, and knowing that it would make much more sense to only pay for the water you use, and seeing your bill actually fluctuate month to month would give you an indication that I need to pull back, or I could save some money by conserving water. That's the incentive, as opposed to this block rate, which is completely arbitrary, and you use your water and nothing changes. So I think being able, even if it's $1 here and there, it turns into an economy sport for some people. Some people trying to get a bargain, right? But that's the incentivization without penalizing people, because it's proactive in the sense that you see exactly how much you're using. And then I agree with, if that would give people the incentive to get a meter, because if they see that their neighbor is only paying $10 a month and they're paying the flat rate of $37.18 or whatever it is now, they're gonna probably want to go get a meter, and we could be conserving water.
Yeah, I'd really like to see a push on meters, and I think years ago the district actually bought a bunch of them, and so it was like a bulk buy of water meters, and then you could just go down to the district office and request one. That's another way to do it, but it would be nice to look and see if there are still some grants available.
I'm curious, Ian, do you see anything about how much water you've used on your bill, or does it just have the...
I open it up and I see the dollar amount, and it's the same every month.
I was just curious
Whether I'm on
because
vacation or
because
not,
I
so
know
I
ours
just
is
thought
a
it was
flat
flat.
rate. So I was just curious whether yours actually, even though you're under that block, I was just wondering if it showed anything.
I think the block is a mistake, because
Unless the block is lower.
well, unless the block is lower, for sure, because I think seeing a fluctuation in your bill, it's like a hydro bill. Every month I get it, and it's like, oh, I used too much power, and I go around, I turn everything off, and like start shutting down my computer, and it would be the same thing with water. It's just a game.
Yeah, users should see their usage. It's part of the incentivization to conserve, but we can look into that.
But the usage is one thing. It's the dollar amount that people focus on when you're paying bills. You're not going to sit there, unless it's your credit card bill, you're not going to sit there, oh, look how you... It doesn't matter if you're paying the same amount. You're just plowing through these bills, right? So
Yeah.
I think seeing that fluctuation and not having that block rate, it should start at 0 and you pay for what you use.
Okay, if there's no further comments, I will move that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council direct staff to present options for using water utility rates to encourage water conservation.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Okay, thank you. The last one that I have for the committee to discuss and consider is about going out and hiring a firm to undertake a water conservation plan.
Okay, and it has been 10 years since the last study was done, correct?
Yep, correct.
Thoughts from council?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with having a plan. And 10 years is a long time, and water has certainly changed in that last decade.
How much is it going to cost?
The 20,
30. Oh yeah,
20
sorry.
20,000,
20,000.
but could be funded through existing grants, it says. Do you know what grants those are?
The grant that shall not be named in public.
That grant, okay.
Just did.
Well, there we go.
Any further discussion?
I just feel like it's all part of being proactive about the water use in town and the conservation in town, and if we have a plan and a way to move forward, and there might be ideas in there that we didn't think about, nobody thought about. That's what professionals are for.
A
Mr.
lot has happened in 10 years.
Yes.
Fact.
Mr. Lawrence?
Just one consideration for council is that we could either implement this now throughout the existing budget, utilizing some existing grants, or we could look at incorporating it into the next fiscal term. Like, we've got a lot of work that we already have in front of staff. And actioning the first 3 items will still go a long way to moving everything forward. So we could consider this as part of next year's budget as well, and then put it into the work plan for there. If council feels that it's like, yeah, let's do this right away, then we do have that ability to fund it and start actioning it sometime this year. But it's just so you're aware, it's not, we can't start it like tomorrow. So it will take time to get it through that process and get an RFP and do all that work. So something to consider.
Yeah, I kind of feel it's better to do it now than to wait a year, especially to get, I mean, the work is going to be done by the consultant, but that will generate a work plan for us to incorporate in the coming months and years. Any other thoughts? Okay, then I will move that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council direct staff to investigate engaging a firm to complete a formal water conservation plan.
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. I'm not supposed to call you councillors. I don't know what to call you. We're in Committee of the Whole. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. There's the answers to your 4 questions, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you very much, committee.
Can I make a general comment now that we've wrapped up the whole discussion? It just it strikes me that at a time when we're having these conversations and we're being asked to take these questions seriously, and we're talking about metering water and putting timers on showers and stuff, that this is really something that I think we need to take with us into future discussions when we're talking about growth scenarios. And it doesn't necessarily strike me as, you know, compatible to be in a situation where we're actively trying to ration water for the community we have now, to talk about looking at a community that could dramatically increase in size in the short term. And I know that, you know, at the workshop, we were there for 5.5 hours, and we talked about all of the economic realities and sort of social realities. But I think Sean did bring up the point of water at one point, and it's something that we can easily overlook at our peril. But if this is where we are today, I wonder where we'd be at if, you know, our population was significantly higher. So that's just something that crossed my mind when I saw this come on the agenda.
And I'm thinking that the consultant will take some of that into account. Population growth, correct?
Yep, certainly.
I think we're also looking at expanding the water supply with the aquifer. We're doing a study, are we not, on the Mercantile Creek?
Yes, so in the report that follows this, there's an attachment called water demand analysis, and Associated Engineering did a growth projection and available water usage availability, and so they took a shot at that, and that's available in your report as well. But it's something that we're going to be. This is sort of our waterworks meeting, and it's something that we're going to be talking about more and more about what's the strength of the aquifer, how much, how limited or unlimited is it, and how much can we sort of stand behind it and count on it as we grow and continue to advance our infrastructure.
Okay, great. Thank you for your report. I will move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report. Do I need a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Hoare seconds. All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Council will now consider the committee's recommendations. So I will move that staff implement a water awareness and conservation communication campaign now.
Second it.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. I will move that staff present regulatory tools that implement water restrictions based on the proposed reservoir levels outlined in report number 24-47, including increasing the levels.
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. I will move that staff present options for using water utility rates to encourage water conservation.
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. And I will move that staff investigate engaging a firm to complete a formal water conservation plan.
I'll second.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries.
Sorry.
Oh.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, and the next item on the agenda is 7.1, Engineering Contract Authorization, Lost Shoe Creek Aquifer Filtration Plant. And this report will also be presented by our Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you, Madame Mayor. So this report is asking for Council's consideration to authorize a contract between the District of Ucluelet and McElhaney Engineering to design the new Lost Shoe Creek Aquifer water filtration plant. The district's water isn't in compliance with the minimum criteria defined by the Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guideline. And over previous years, the district, to try to solve that problem, has undertaken several professional studies, including our Water Master Plan, the Water Concept, Treatment and Feasibility Study, as well as Water Demand Evaluation. Those studies have shaped the direction that lead us to where we are today, with wanting to improve our infrastructure to meet the minimum criteria. This project has taken quite a trajectory and has landed in a place that we believe is manageable today and feasible. So where we left this last is, so prior to going out to hiring a consultant previously to undertake the project, we went out and had a cost estimate completed, and that cost estimate came back at a staggering $20 million. From there, we received approval from council and the electoral body to go out and borrow $13 million to complete the project. That $13 million was going to be used to close the gap between our $7 million grant from the Investing in Canadian Infrastructure program and the estimated project cost of $20 million. Once we received approval from the electoral body, staff reconsidered the financial implications of that loan and sort of re-strategized. And so it was determined at that point that borrowing that much money, $13 million on a long-term basis, would consume about 54% of the district's long-term borrowing capacity. So it meant challenges buying new fire trucks, rec halls, operational items, etc. From there, we engaged the funders from the ICIP program to ask if we could reduce the scope of the program and maintain the grant, the value of the grant. They don't normally like to do that with cost-sharing agreements. They're fixed scope for fixed dollars and fixed deliverables. They suggested and informed that if we did a value engineering exercise on our project and verified that we could meet the original objectives of the grant, that they would consider maintaining the original value of the grant and allow us to reduce the scope. So we did that. We hired associate engineering who completed a value engineering exercise and verified that we can meet the deliverables of the original grant. We presented that to the grant funders and they approved, yes, we can have the grant and we can reduce our scope. So originally the plan was to build 2 new water treatment facilities and 1 new reservoir. The funder has agreed that we can build 1 treatment facility and maintain the value of the grant. So from there, we published a procurement, a request for proposals to bring in engineering firms to provide proposals to design the one Lost Shoe Creek Aquifer Treatment Facility. And we received 4 very competitive proposals from the market. We scored them against corporate identification and reputation, proponent credentials, team availability, relevant past experience, and price. McElhaney Engineering provided a proposal that demonstrated excellent relevant experience, excellent credentials, good availability, and the lowest price of all the 4 proposals that we've received. So for that reason, the recommended winner of this proposal, of this procurement rather, is McElhaney Engineering, who provided a proposal to design the plant at $1,240,000 plus GST. So for that value, if approved today, we would get started on the design immediately. And then in the fall, we'd be in a position to come back to council and provide an update on the total project cost. So the construction of the facility. It's currently estimated through Associated Engineering's feasibility study that this will cost about $12 million to construct. So now we have a $12 million construction cost estimate and a proposal for $1.2 million to design it. This report today is only asking for the acceptance or consideration acceptance of just the design contract. The 2 reports, the 2 options in front of council today are to authorize the contract and proceed or to not proceed. There's some pros and cons to each. So the benefits of authorizing the contract today is that we immediately get started on the design. We immediately start moving towards improving the health of the water in the community. And we achieve the deliverables of the grant. We're moving in that direction. Some of the cons are that there's a financial commitment that we're tracking towards, and that we're relying on the cost estimates that have been received so far from Associated Engineering. An option to not proceed with the contract today. The pro of that is that there's no financial commitment. The con of that is that we're really risking defaulting our $7 million grant from ICIP. The schedule right now is very tight. We have to be completed by the end of 2026. We're behind, and it has to go in a very fast-track manner now to get to the end. It's definitely doable. We're on track, but it is worth mentioning. So I guess that's really it, Council. So I'll leave it in your hands for discussion, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. Any questions for staff? Councillor Anderson?
Yeah. Okay. I had a question earlier about the costs. I read this a couple of times. Be nice if it was like an audio book, like where you could read this to me. You've got a really soothing voice for this stuff, and it'd be like, so I'm hearing it a second time anyway. It's like, why don't you just record it and then we can just kind of
just call me anytime.
You'd love that the night before. Hey, just go through for an hour and talk to me. But yeah, so just looking at the costs there. Well, I definitely have a question about the grant. That looks, but what are the chances that, like, looking, and I realize that the costs were escalated because of things like COVID and supply chains and things like that. But I'm wondering if, and I know this is just for the engineering contract part, but if we say we committed today to this, what are the chances that construction cost especially goes up by the time that we have to pay for this? Is it, like, are we pretty confident with this, or I know that's a big question here.
Through the mayor, so it's the estimate that we have is a Class D, so 50% accuracy on a concept and feasibility study that was done by Associated Engineering. I can share that we had that estimate done really post-COVID at the highest points in the engineering and construction market that we've seen so far, and that is starting to stabilize. in some of the sectors is starting to, I don't want to say it too loud, but it's starting to reduce a little bit. But a stabilizing is what we're seeing in this industry specifically. So mechanical engineering, pumps, pipes, etc. That's stabilized. So that's looking favorable for us. In the procurement, we listed that we had a $9.6 million budget for design and construction, because that was our original grant, our original district commitment. This was supposed to be a $9.6 million project. And so the proponents have shown up ready to take the concept and feasibility study and try to optimize it to get close to our $9.6 million budget. I'll share that the feedback we've received is that it's almost impossible. It's very difficult. McElhaney is very aware that we're trying to drive this cost down below the figure that I have in the report.
Right.
So through their design practice, we're going to be trying to drive that cost down and trying to optimize it. But so I would say that I'm kind of reporting this as I hope this is a worst case figure.
Right. Excellent. That's the answer I was looking for. And then the other question I just had was the investing in Canada infrastructure program. Is that predominantly like potable water, or
No,
is
it's through the mayor. So it's billions of dollars that have gone out for Canadian infrastructure, including our water treatment plant and Amtrak House. It's the same grant,
Oh, it is.
or the same pool of funds.
How often? You see the wheels turning here, guys. I'll save that. I'll wait till next time.
Any other questions for staff? Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I will move that council authorize the corporate officer and the mayor to enter into and execute a contract between McElhaney Engineering and the District of Ucluelet for the design of the Lost Shoe Creek Aquifer Filtration Plant for a total cost of $1,240,000 plus GST.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Thank you for your report.
Thank you very much.
Are there any notices of motion? There are two correspondence items. The first one is 9.1, Union of BC Municipalities Minister Meetings. I'd like to bring that forward for discussion. So on March 26th, Council directed staff to prepare minister meeting requests for UBCM on the following topics: fire hall grants, RCMP additional members, supportive housing, the lifeguard program, BC Transit, cell service on Highway 4, and health services. We would also like to meet with the province to discuss infrastructure challenges associated with facilitating future development. Any comments from council on that?
I did have a fun read through the information and all the little sub things. It's actually quite fascinating. The one that just jumped out into my head when I was reading it was the wave energy, the idea of like, is there anybody doing that? Because we could talk to low carbon and energy and resources, whichever ministry it is. I don't know. Or it's a back burner, but it's just one of those things like, you've got seaweed. So I'm just thinking about waves every time I'm at the lighthouse and watching the waves. I'm like, all that energy. Why can't we harness some of that, right?
I don't even know what ministry that would be.
It is the Ministry of Energy, Mines,
Energy.
and Low Carbon
Got it.
Resources, or low carbon. It's Josie.
Did you want to add that to the list?
I kind of, yeah. Why not? Why not put in a request if we can?
I would support that for sure.
Economic diversification. whatever
Yeah,
that
I
is.
feel like I had this discussion with Andy Goldsworthy from Shift Environmental down in Victoria, and
They're just, the turbines aren't at that point yet, or?
no, they were interested in talking about sort of doing test facilities here and there, and if we thought that maybe we had a good location that they might. But they do so much that the conversation was drifting all over the place. Pardon the pun. I really didn't mean that.
Yeah, you totally
But there
did.
might be something there. I need to go back through my notes, but it may make we might have better luck talking to them, because again, just like Pacific Seaweed came to talk to us, they seemed willing to discuss any and all opportunities. So they do a lot of ocean monitoring and impacts of shipping, and they have all this high tech equipment. So they're always looking for places to put it. So
Right.
this.
Yeah,
could
so
be-
it might be better to go to industry than to go to the ministry. I just, it's one of those things, like, what are the, are there grants, are there things out there for low carbon energy?
Mr. Lawrence?
I'm actually can speak to this. Mr. John Toogood has been keeping in touch with the folks in Victoria. Periodically they reach out and we have general discussions about it. I've been a couple of times, some different private entities have reached out and said, hey, we'd love to do a wave energy project. Will you give us $6 million and we'll get a grant funding for it? So we've had ongoing, so it's still percolating, and I think it started in 2006, maybe earlier. I remember Mr. Jeff Lyons
Yeah,
was
it
a
was one of
big
his things.
advocate for it. So there is I wouldn't call it movement. It is still on the radar, but we're like quite far down on the list. It hasn't been identified as a key strategic priority by council at this point in time. But that's something that we can definitely, bring forward. Strategic planning would be a good time to bring that forward. There is a lot of money out there, especially if there's a partnership opportunity between a municipality and a nation. Something like $6 billion on renewable energy projects that is floating around there right now. So there is quite a significant amount of money that is available for the right opportunity. We're in one of the very few places in the province that we have excellent access to the grid. We have excellent access to waves, and we're a community that is relatively easy to get to. So there are organizations and the University of Victoria and their study, they're looking for partners for something like this. And we've been sort of slowly engaging. We don't get a lot of correspondence from, but we always respond with general interest. But there hasn't been a deserted time dedicated to fostering and bringing that forward. But I can tell council that yes, there is grant funding available. Yes, there's interested groups. The technology is getting better. I don't know much about the technology and where its status is, but improved trials out here is definitely a possibility. And if there's a partnership with UFN that we could look at, possibly, depending on the environmental impacts and that they might see as a concern.
I think that's where Shift Environmental comes in. So they do the monitoring of impacts of anything that is being proposed. And I believe we're going to be looking briefly at this with the Economic Development Committee. So that's kind of on our list of things to pursue as well.
So would it be valuable to set up a meeting with the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovations?
I think it would definitely be worthwhile for council to request that conversation, to say we're interested, we would like their support, and how do we go about doing some form of wave energy project, renewable energy in our community. I think that would be a worthwhile opportunity to advocate early on in the process and say we're interested.
So, Councillor Hoare, would you like to make that motion?
Yes. So moved. Can I just do that?
I did that last time.
Can I move that we look to set up a meeting with the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation regarding wave energy implementation or discussions,
Perfect.
period, full stop.
Do I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Sorry, Mayor McEwen. Just regarding the original reason for bringing up the UBCM.
I
is
was
the
just about to get to
Oh,
this.
sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry to
I
jump
broke
the
in.
gun.
Yeah, we just got sidetracked with wave energy, but I would move that staff request a ministerial meeting at the 2024 Union of British Columbia Municipalities Conference regarding local infrastructure challenges and future development.
I will second that.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that carries. What ministry would that be with? Municipal Affairs?
We're going to look into that one.
Okay. I'll leave it open-ended then. And then the other item of correspondence is from Zach Delano, Managing Director, Big Wave Risk Assessment Group. And they are holding surf safety training in Tofino. Well, they're calling it Tofino. It's probably in the park. Does anybody want to connect with these people and maybe hook them up with CBT and the Surf Guard program that doesn't exist and any of that stuff?
I can do that.
Okay, Councillor Anderson wants to. How do you want to word that?
I don't know. Is it a motion, or I'll just
Reach out.
reach out?
A motion for if a councillor wants to reach out to a community group, a motion isn't really required by council.
Okay.
I'll connect with them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And I'll bring that up.
Okay, we're moving into mayor's announcements and council committee reports. Councillor Anderson?
I'm never ready for this for some reason. What did I do? So I'll try and go quickly here. After the last meeting we had, the next day was the Alberni Clackwood Health Network meeting. Those are always great, and Brooke spoke. So we got to talk about the new medical center going in here, and then that spawned off a bunch of things. So hopefully we can interface with VHOP pretty soon. I'm just working on that. We talked to Josie about that. So that's in the works right now, and then associated BC Housing with that, which is exciting. So I'm trying to get everyone in the same room to talk about that. There was a 3-day conference online. I want to actually write a bit of a summary for that, and I didn't get a chance to do that yet, but I attended a 3-day conference. It was in Toronto. It was online, called the Future of Aging Summit, which was great, actually. There's a lot of parts to that. It was online because I didn't attend in person. It was in Toronto. I didn't take into account the time change. It started at 7 a.m., which was 4 a.m. Our time.
Oh, no.
I missed the first part because I didn't realize. I didn't get up at 4. I just got up at 7, and there was no one on. I was like, hello. So it was that was a little bit embarrassing.
hate
But
when that happens.
you get a copy of everything digitally if you register. So it all worked out. So I want to. There's really great stuff in there for advocating for seniors, technologies like upcoming technologies, long-term care. There's basically a lot of things that apply to us. So I want to write up a proper summary on that to send out to everybody. I met with a couple of people in town that had concerns about what was happening with like STRs, and met with them in person just to go over some of their concerns, which the one standout thing that was there, and I know we don't want to get into a big debate about it, but one of the things that stood out was people were worried about long-term rentals becoming STRs, and there was that floating in the air. So, and that was the concern that people had brought up with me. So I ended up reaching out to the provincial wing of the residential or tenancy branch about that, and they they reassured me that that if someone was long-term renting a unit, and they evicted their tenant. That, in fact, if they did end up putting that into an STR by license or otherwise, that they would essentially be on the hook for 1 year's rent for that tenant moving forward. There's quite a process there for that, and that also that long-term rentals, the lease agreement now stays with the property. So even if it's sold, I didn't realize that actually that lease continues on unless there's an agreement otherwise. So the new people that buy the house, that lease still sits with that rental unit. I didn't realize that either. So there's a list of protections that I just wanted to go over. I'm just going to get my head around that when I'm talking to people. The other thing was the grand opening of the Little Beans, which that was pretty cool to go to. Donna Louie was there, and Josie Osborne after our meeting that we had with her. And one of the cool things about meeting with Josie Osborne was to be able to bring up 1300 Peninsula, and just we talked about, is there anything we can do there, or anything that she can do to help. So hopefully she can help kick that one forward a little bit. And then there was 2 follow-up meetings with BC Housing about why, the first one was the debrief with BC Housing about why we potentially, or why we didn't get that funding for supportive housing. And I'm not gonna go off too much on that, because I think that's probably a report that's going to be coming from Mr. Gregg. But it looks like it has something to do with the size of who we are, because we were so small compared to, I think the smallest unit was that got funded was in Port Alberni with 60 units, and we're 5 or 6, so it was quite small, fortunately. And then there was another meeting today about that, which was basically a debrief, so a debrief about the debrief, and then we talked about that, and then some actions that are potential ways that we can move forward with 1300, maybe changing the way that we do this, like women's transition funds. So I'll save that information for a report from Mr. Gregg, and that's it for me.
Great, thank you. So why was there a debrief about the debrief?
The first one was with BC Housing, and actually there was someone from BC Housing that was on this one as well today, but it was more just what we're getting from this and what we want to do moving forward. So West Coast Resources was there as well. So Lori was there, so we could look at alternative funding moving forward if we don't get that grant again, and other possibilities. So that was just sort of more of an internal thing. And John and Too Good and Bruce were on it, and the whole gang. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It sounds like there are other possibilities for that.
Okay, great. Councillor Hoare.
I'm glad to hear about the debrief on the debrief, partly because 1300, while it might be a tiny little project, the per capita impact for our little town is huge and significantly bigger than most of the projects they've funded elsewhere, but the number is smaller. I also met with MLA Osborne and was at the opening of Little Beans. Fun watching the kids have sugar and run around. And to see your little bean, soon to be little bean. I also attended the Praz Firefighter Fundraiser Gala on Saturday, which was great fun. Good excuse to dress up. We got outbid on an auction item. Miss Fortune and I were bidding on a dinner from Heartwood. But yeah, it was a really good time. Great music, great food. I'm not sure who got the best dressed guy, but I want to put a shout out to Nellie Hay, who turned up in a dress made from her recycled sales and won the Wow Gal prize, as she should have. It was amazing. Yeah, just super fun to see everybody dressed up and having a good time. And then I got up and did inventory at like 6 a.m. the next morning. In fact, my alarm was set for like 4:30. So if only I'd known, I'd have attended your meeting, you know.
And it was great of Marla Thirsk to design those little trophies for the best dressed.
They were amazing. She brought them into
saw
the co-op when she finished them, and we were all admiring. So, yeah, pretty splendid.
Great. Councillor Kennington.
I had the good fortune of being on vacation in Toronto, so I have nothing to report other than I had a great time.
You could have attended that
No, I was
aging
on
conference.
vacation.
Oh, sorry, right.
I certainly wasn't up at 7 a.m. I did attend a rave and a stand-up comedy. Anyway.
Okay, good to know. Councillor Mafty.
I have nothing to report, either as productive or as entertaining.
That's it?
That's it.
Nothing. And you were heading somewhere exotic.
Yes, shortly, but I've confirmed that even with the time difference, I'm going to be able to virtually attend all of our meetings. So I'll be present. And
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, good to know. Okay, for me, on May 15th, I attended the Barclay Community Forest Corporation meeting at the Tokwat office. And we have finally set up our tour for council on June 28th at 1 o'clock, right after their AGM. They're going to take those of us that are able to attend on a tour of the community forest. So I don't know how many of you are going, but we'll figure out vehicles, I guess. We'll need a four-wheel drive to get out there. The next day, May 16th, I was on an ACRD tour of Spirit Point Lodge site, which is located at the Midlands. And so that was an interesting tour. The owner just wanted to show the planning department of the ACRD what was out there and what he had planned to do out there. May 17th was our meeting with MLA Josie Osborne. I was wondering what we could talk about for an hour and a half, but actually that time flew by really quickly. It was amazing, yeah. And then I attended the grand opening of Little Beans Infant Toddler Centre, which used to be the old Chamber of Commerce building. May 22nd, I attended the ACRD board meeting, and they actually held it here in our council chambers for a change. I didn't have to go to Port Alberni. Everyone was very impressed with our building and our council chambers. 6 directors from Port Alberni and 3 staff carpooled out here for that meeting. So, and the funny thing is, Veda Siga she represents Area C. She didn't know it was being held here. She drove to Port and had to zoom into to the meeting from Port Alberni. Anyway, couple of items from that agenda that affect us. The Long Beach Airport line marking contract was awarded. The West Coast landfill tipping fee bylaw amendment was passed. And then there was a very large report on phase 1 of health professional recruitment and retention by the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network. Marcy did put that together. And that's a huge report. If you're interested, go to the May 22nd ACRD. Well, go to their website, and in the May 22nd agenda package, you'll see a really, really interesting report. It has mainly to do with the Alberni Valley, but lots of great information on how they're trying to attract and retain physicians and other healthcare workers. May 24th, I sat in on the Island Health Quarterly Update, and today I was on the ACRD West Coast Transit 7-week update, and there's some interesting statistics from that I just want to pull out here. So as you know, the West Coast Transit started April 2nd, and so it's been operating for 7 weeks. The ridership started in week 1 at 106, and it's gone up now to week 7, it's at 275. So it's almost tripled in 7 weeks, the ridership. There were no demographics. the operator of the bus has not installed the equipment to actually capture the ages and where people are coming from or any of that. They're going to install that mid-June, so we won't have another update until the end of August, so that a certain amount of data can be collected and shared with us. They did experience some labor issues because of the way the bus routes go. There was a 4-hour gap kind of in the middle of the day, which nobody was really happy with. So they're going to adjust the schedule slightly to try and avoid that huge gap right in the middle of the day. Some other challenges: if someone just wants to buy one ticket on the bus, they have to have the app on their phone. There is no way to buy one ticket anywhere. You can buy books of 10 for $50, but not everybody wants to do that. They might just want to buy one ticket. So they're looking at ways of maybe having, when BC Transit comes on board in January of next year, they may be able to offer a tap system to ride the bus. Kids under 5 must be with someone that's 12 or over. And someone suggested that maybe there could be an express bus once a day that just doesn't stop anywhere in between the two towns, just goes right through. So that was a good idea. It was kind of a brainstorming session because everyone on that Teams meeting has heard feedback from kind of their spheres of reference. So they all had some input into what the feedback was. And I think that's it for me. Tomorrow I have a Tourism Ucluelet board meeting, but that's it for my meetings.
I'd just like to bring an email that we just received to attention. Apparently Whistler received $807,000 in RMI funding for their skate park. So it is something that occurs and maybe something we should look into.
Wow. 800,000.
800,000. 807,000.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's exciting.
Okay, question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions and comment on matters within council's jurisdiction. Representations about matters that council is prohibited from holding a public hearing on and matters that were subject to a public hearing are not permitted at this time. Are there any audience members that wish to address council? Sure. Okay. Go up to the mic, please. And just state your name and the topic, please.
My name is Dennis Morgan. I'm a local business owner and resident here for 10 years. I've spoken to two councillors and emailed with one, and spoken to Josh Jenkins from the chamber about trying to nail down what exactly the changes, the amendments to the bylaw 1310 includes, what that means for, in particular, some of my workers who are in LTRs that are now LTRs but were STRs before that bylaw came into being. And mostly my concern was, okay, as Sean is one of the ones I talked to about this, what happens when the amendments come into effect and people who have been rubbing their hands around this go, okay, you're out. And so it was reassuring to hear, from Sean especially, that, I mean, I knew the tenancy branch would protect them, but there are other protections as well. And so that, I think, has calmed a lot of people's fears. And I think it is, given that council has made those amendments, I think it is a little bit incumbent upon you to do some education around what renters' rights are, and just not leave it all up to these 20-somethings that might feel a lot of pressure from a landlord and really not know how to deal with it. And that could just, in the form of an open house, something where people who have the answers that they need to hear present that information. I would strongly suggest that.
That's a good point because, people need to know what their rights are, for sure.
Yeah, and in Bruce's report the other day, and actually Ian in your email as well, you mentioned that there were only 2 B&Bs that converted to long terms, I believe it was. But there were also several houses, and this is the information report that Bruce Gregg presented on November 21st, 2023 at that meeting. There were several houses that converted to LTRs as well after that. And these were houses that people weren't living in, and they had to then go, okay, am I going to live there or am I going to rent it? And they chose to rent it. And so it's a significant, I mean, it's a small but significant number of staff houses. And it's, as I mentioned to Sean, I'm short 2 cooks, and I wouldn't be if there was housing. I do rent one of the Yuki Lodge rooms, and I pay for that whether there's somebody in there or not, but that's just the cost of doing business, right? There's somebody in it now, and that's a cook, but I don't have any other spaces, and so I'm short 2 cooks. So Wednesday, Thursday nights are no food and no revenue from food. So to protect those people that are in LTRs, I would greatly appreciate it if there was, a show from the district because, from council and mayor and council, I think.
Like a frequently asked question kind of thing.
Yeah, something. Or an open house. I'll even host it at the Bury. On a Tuesday night when we're closed, we just, for that purpose, exclusively.
Great. Well, thank you for your comments.
Can I just make one point? Because this, Sean brought it up in his report to council, and Dennis alluded to it as well. I spoke to a number of people who had similar concerns and allayed their concerns. One of the things that I think is often overlooked is a lot of people in this community rent a room from a landlord who lives on the premises. And if you share a kitchen with your landlord, you're not a tenant and you're not under the Tenancy Act. And so the rules and protections of the Tenancy Act don't apply to you. And so a lot of people are either under the misconception that they are tenants when in fact they're not. And there's a lot of confusion around that, and it applies to, I think, a disproportionately high number of renters in this community in particular who live on the same premises and share a kitchen with their landlord. And so that's something that is of concern for me because those renters have far fewer protections than if they were a tenant under the BC Tenancy Act.
Do they not have a lease agreement at all? In that case?
They have an agreement that they make with their landlord, but if you're a tenant under the BC Tenancy Act, you're covered no matter what. It's like a default set of protections that supersedes anything else, that you can avail yourself of a whole bunch of different mechanisms to sort of ensure your rights. The point about sort of landlord intimidation is real, though, I think, and a lot of people who feel vulnerable, who don't know, who are sort of at their wits' end, they're like, wow, I'm legally within my rights to stay here and take my landlord to small claims court or file a dispute with the tenancy board, but psychologically they're not prepared to do that, and so they're out. But as far as people who are not tenants, their landlord can basically say, here's like a 30-day eviction notice, goodbye, and that's fine. The tenant can dispute it, but at that point it has to go to like a small claims court type of thing. There's no superseding protection for them because they're not tenants.
That's the problem with secondary market apartment rentals, and why we need purpose-built rental buildings, because they are protected. There will be vacancy controls. The security of housing in somebody else's house it's the least secure form of housing, because you can move your grandmother in there and kick somebody out. It's just not secure.
Right. I agree with what you're saying, though. Like, there should be some sort of we got to put our heads together and figure out what the best forum is to educate, especially like young folks that come out that don't have the time, or and they might not be as savvy with you're talking to people on council or whatever. Yeah. They're out here doing their thing, just trying to make ends meet. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's something we have to. Yeah, there needs to be a protection there.
We have to figure out what to do with seasonal workers, because they don't fit anywhere. someone can't rent their house out or their apartment out for 3 months of the year and expect to pay their mortgage for 12 months of the year. It doesn't work. So we do need some workforce housing, and we need to figure out how we're going to do that, and whether that's, you know, a building similar to PRHDC, but in a building that businesses can rent year round at a reasonable rate and house their staffing in. But I don't think it's going to happen in people's basements. It just doesn't work. So we need to put our heads together and come up with a real solution, for sure. And hopefully that works for the businesses in town. And we're working with, it's one of the topics we're discussing on the Economic Development Committee as well. Like, so every aspect of what we do on council, in our committees and in council, we're all working towards a solution for this. So,
Well, and honestly, I learned a lot about what you were doing through talking to, you know, all these people, and I don't think the general public understands that. I think again, you need to get out there and say this is what we're doing, because it's very important work, A, and B, I don't think you're getting the sort of credit for what you're doing. And you should. Like, if you're working hard on this stuff, people need to know that, because everybody's concerned about it.
well, people have access to YouTube, and everything we say and do is in the public eye. So there's nothing happening behind closed doors really related to
in
this.
committee though, like, do you YouTube your committee meetings where you're talking, you're doing short-term or long-term housing planning? And
No, but that happens once a year. Any of the resolutions that come out of those are in the public eye, so it's a chance for us to discuss the issues, but no decisions are made outside of that, or inside
I
of
think
those.
that's what I'm referring to, though, is some of that. I don't mean to make it sound like you're doing things behind closed doors, just that information isn't as readily available as YouTube of council meetings, agendas, minutes, etc. Right? So get out there and toot your horn once in a while.
I do go on Tough City Radio, and there is a link to the two times that I was on the council. What do you call it, Nancy? The council update or whatever that you send out.
Newsletter.
The newsletter, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And there are links to the live feed, or to the recorded feed from that. So that I'm trying to do that. CBC Radio interviewed me last week, and it's all about housing, of course.
Yeah.
So, we'll try and think of other ways to reach people in other manners.
Yeah, it is tough, and you had a good point there that if maybe we can do something sort of informal where we sit and then they can just ask questions and just do a night, and you've got a perfect place for it, and if there's folks that haven't had the time or they just don't know, all right, and then they can just casually be like, hey, what about this situation, and then we're like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, everyone's different as far as how much time they can spend on this stuff, and I don't mind doing it. I know not everybody can, but I don't mind doing it, and it's I kind of like chatting and figuring out like what people's particular situations
Well,
are.
going back and watching a day's worth of council meetings to get my head around a lot of this stuff took me more than a day to do a day. That's for sure. And I was like, where do I find the time to do that? But I think that's because I was really motivated, but most people aren't. So,
Yeah, good point.
okay.
One final thing, you opened up by saying that now that the bylaws have been repealed, that's going to
Amended.
yes, but there's going to be a public hearing about that, so that's something that I think you should. Is there a date for that yet, Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, it's the 11th.
The 11th. So that's any of your employees or anyone else who has concerns, and anyone who's watching on YouTube now or later should take note of that, because that's the perfect opportunity to come and be heard and put your comments and your concerns on the record for your own benefit as well as that of the community.
And unfortunately, we can't respond to those comments, so we just have to listen. So they might not learn anything from that meeting, but they would have to tune into the YouTube video to see what comes out of those hearings. So.
Yeah. And you asked me a couple like specific questions, and you're like, I don't have the time to dig through like all these different YouTube things to find the answer, and I was able to get it pretty quick to you.
Yeah.
because I just kind of knew where they were offhand, and because I have all the reports just kind of sitting there, so that was pretty easy. So I don't mind doing that. Like if you had someone that was in like the situation that we're talking about and they wanted some advice, like they can contact me through my email directly and do it that way too. But yeah.
And if people are getting the short end of the stick, we should know that too, because people shouldn't be getting kicked out of their long-term rentals. There are protections in place, and we're not going to turn a blind eye to that happening, because usually when that happens, there's probably a bylaw infraction happening on top of a tenancy board infraction. So we're here for everybody. We're not just speaking to one aspect.
Yeah,
of
Sean
this.
mentioned the OCP bylaw has protections.
Yeah.
Bill 55, the provincial STR regulation has protections. So, you know, there's a lot of protection, and but I doubt that it's widely understood.
I noticed today somebody posted they're starting a new Facebook group. We
Oh,
all
no.
love Facebook, but this is for anybody who is having issues to speak anonymously. And some of that, I'm not going to join it because I'm trying to stay off of Facebook. But
You could join it anonymously.
no, I don't want to see it. But hopefully, it's a support group, and it's both for bad tenants and bad it's everything related to tenancy. So people might find some answers in there, or it could just turn into a complete morass. But
Got potential to go sideways.
Okay, well, we'll take your comments into consideration, and thank you for bringing them to us.
Thanks, Dennis.
No one else is in the audience. Are there any members of the public attending by Zoom or telephone that would like to address council?
There are currently no attendants online.
Okay, and have we received any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
We received the email Councillor Kennington referred to, which you guys have in your inbox there, and then we received a correspondence item before the meeting, so that'll be for a future meeting.
That will be for
A future meeting.
a future meeting. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, then I will move that the
Just a sec.
Oh.
Sorry. I forgot something in my report, and I just want to get it on the record because our next meeting comes afterwards. So
Okay.
I just wanted to let everybody know that not this weekend, but the following weekend is the Rock Around the West Coast Glee Show. So Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Kiss, and Queen, sung by the kids.
Excellent.
Always worth a little bit of fun. Tickets are $10 at the door. Doors open at 6. Show starts at 6:30. Yeah, cash only. We don't take tap. I'm probably going to be at the door. So please come out and support the fellow members of your community. They may be small, but they're still part of your community. So
Great, thanks for that reminder. I will move that the May 28th, 2024 regular council meeting be adjourned at 5:57. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Always forget something.
Yeah,
Like,
everything's out.
Courtney would like string me up if I didn't get that one.
I was like, oh yeah, I went to that other thing. I forgot about. Yeah, I always forget something too. Should I?